There is something about running that, both from an emotional and a physical perspective, that makes you feel really good. I started running when I was in 8th grade in grade school, and was something that I was naturally good at, so I went out for the track team, didn't run cross country, and then was recruited by the coach to run high school cross country. The girls that I ran with, we were the first girls cross country team, so we were sort of an unusual group of girls that didn't mind having to run with the boys in practice and having to race in the boys' races until the girls' team became officially its own team. And I have stayed friends with those girls ever since. At least the 3 or 4 of them, we've remained very close friends, and we still run together today. I started running again after my second child was born, and I did it originally to stay in shape. And I was at the time only running 2 miles, and I thought that was an incredible distance back then. And I was watching my brother-in-law actually run a marathon, and the thought of running something like that never occurred to me. And while I was running and cheering on, he had gone by, and all of a sudden I see my girlfriend, my childhood friend that I've known for years, finishing the race, and I started cheering for her, and through that we kind of connected, and somehow she roped me into the thought of maybe running a marathon. And I remember uttering the words, "Oh, I'll never run a marathon." And we started connecting on the weekends. We lived pretty close to each other, and we just started running for fun and socializing and talking. And the next thing I knew, I was doing training runs and getting ready, and I ran my first marathon in 1997, I think it was. And we've been running and hanging out and socializing with other people that have similar interests in running since then. Emotionally, I don't know if it's the endorphins or that natural high that you get when you finish a race. And I think it's because it's one of those sports that you're not competing against anybody else. You're really competing against whatever goal you set for yourself. And yes, while you run a race, you are competing against other people. Really, it's the betterment of whatever you did the race before, the time before, the year before, whether you're coming back from an injury, whether you need it for training for another sport, or whether you just want to drop a few pounds. And what I didn't expect by joining a running group or hanging out with other runners was the social aspect and the camaraderie. And so that sort of keeps you motivated, and instead of going to parties or things like that, we find ourselves signing up for marathons or different races or bike events or things like that that basically enhance our running, and we really enjoy running and hanging out together. The race that I'm probably the most proud of, I guess you'd have to say, would be the first marathon I ever ran, mostly because even when you're training, you typically go 20 to 22 miles before a 26.2 mile race, and you just can't imagine in your mind, you can't fathom that you could actually run as far as you would typically even drive in a car. And I remember experiencing that runner's high, that adrenaline feeling when I finished, and having my family and my kids there. I was so proud of that accomplishment, and it was very exciting. So that's probably the race that I'm the most proud of, and it was in 1998. To try to figure out what my favorite race is, that's a little bit more difficult, because each race, almost every year, it gets better than the year before, and for different reasons. I have races that I have are my favorite because maybe I've run faster. You know, I had Boston, I ran a 5K in Boston, and I actually took 4th in my age group and 5th overall. But the Cincinnati Flying Pig Marathon was probably one of my favorite experiences of a race, because I was feeling so good the entire race. I was able to sort of take in all of the crazy sights and the people dressed up, and we brought our cameras and took pictures everywhere. And then I know people think I'm crazy for saying this, but I ran an ultra marathon more for the difficulty of the marathon, called the Tecumseh Trail Marathon, and you're in the woods and there's a lot of elevation, and brought the camera, and just because you can't really run it for time because it's single trail running, that was probably one of my favorite from the scenic perspective, and it was just so much fun. And it was 9 degrees and snowing and freezing cold, and but when I was finished, I was so incredibly happy. So and again, all of these races, when you finish and you're surrounded by your friends and your family, is what makes the experience probably one of your favorite things.